Hi, guys. Welcome to The Deciding Factor. I'm John.
And I'm Barbara.
And I'm Alton.
And together we make up one fun show. I screwed that up. I don't know why I called a fun show.
You totally blew it, man.
Yeah. All right, here we go. Hi, guys. Welcome to another episode of The Deciding Factor. I'm John.
And I'm Barbara.
And I'm Alton.
And together we make up this show where we take all sorts of opinions and topics and we bundle them all together. And that's what we call the deciding factor. So if you're new to this show, this topic today is going to be, should I have kids or not? This topic is a very unique topic. And I do not know how this conversation will turn out. And hopefully we will not spill liquids all over our equipment today, right, Alton?
No promises.
All right, guys, stay tuned. This is The Deciding Factor.
Everyday life issues broken down to help you build your own opinions on the issues that matter most. Coming to you from Austin, Texas, this is The Deciding Factor with your host, Alton Hill and John Herzog.
Hi, guys. Welcome again. Today's topic is, should I have kids or not? I personally have two step kids as well as two blood-related kids. And why don't y'all guys share your part?
Barbara, how many children do you have?
I have 4 kids. They are all mine. One marriage, the whole time.
And I have 4 daughters. So whether we think it's a good idea or not, we're all guilty.
we're all knee deep in it at this point, right?
It's true.
So when you have kids, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Wait a second. That's a loaded question.
I was going to say, isn't this a family show? Because I don't think that's where...
This is like right before you have kids. Can you restate the question?
So you're thinking about the happy times before you have the kids.
Barbara's mind is in the gutter, so I'm just trying to make sure I know what you're asking.
Sorry. Okay, I'm going to rephrase your question. So were all of your kids planned?
That's not the question I asked.
It's totally, I'm rephrasing it because that'll sort of dictate what you were thinking about beforehand, whether or not you were thinking like, wow, this seems fun, or whether or not you were thinking, it's time to expand our life, you know. It's different.
Well, I planned on having sex that night. Does that count? No, it doesn't work?
I don't think everyone believes that children and sex are synonymous. I could be wrong there, but
that's a thing I would love to dive into because okay, is it just me or do we meet a lot of people that are still astounded that it happens? Like, no, I should be able just to have sex and not ever get pregnant. Somehow culturally we've separated those two, and I don't quite
well
the why.
Okay, so there's some trickiness involved sometimes. So I
didn't realize we were going off the deep end this soon into the podcast.
I told you it was going to go off the deep end.
You're welcome, everyone.
I warned you.
We brought Barb to the conversation. That was the mistake number 1. So
we've either got the audience hooked or everyone has turned us off. As you were, John, go ahead.
So it's not me, but I know several people that they are quote unquote lied to by the girl that they got pregnant. And a lot of them say that phrase, I can't get pregnant. Exactly. Right away, you start laughing about it because you know good and well there's a lot of girls out there that will use that line to sink their claws into them. It has happened. I have proof. I just can't tell you who it is. So. But,
okay, there's so much wrong with this, though. You're saying that as a guy, you're like, okay, she says she can't get pregnant. I understand biology. All right.
I guarantee you a guy is not saying that.
Yeah, you're making men sound
He's just looking for
daft.
a green light.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I can't speak for all men, but I'm speaking for all men.
Go for it.
Yeah.
Oh, I did.
I
I'm
would.
just looking for a green light.
Okay, so back to my original question that Barb completely screwed up. When you think of kids, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
I don't know how to braid hair.
What about you, Ray?
Well, when you say kids, what flashes into my mind is that so my grandfather, he was kind of like a father figure to me in his later years. He had like lots of surgeries. And so I lived with him for some time, which is kind of a unique experience as a high schooler to be living with your grandfather while your parents are still living in the same town and everything. So it was a little different. So I had twins when I was like, well, Heather, my wife, actually bore the children. I did all the hard work, but I guess that was when I was like 25. So, I guess they were like 3 years old and they'd be running around going crazy. And I'd be like, oh, kids this and kids that. And one day my grandfather kind of like grabs me by the arm and looks me in the eye and says, Alton, kids are baby goats. Those are your children. And I was like, well, some days I think it's the same, but I do think about that often when I'm calling them my kids. I'm like, they're kind of like goats, but I'm going to try to say children. So that's what I think of.
I
when
have
say
seen you
kids.
herd them at church. Come on,
I mean,
gather around. Let's do this.
it's a
But-
tough job.
The first thing that comes to my mind, though, is the money involved. Have y'all ever looked that statistic up?
It's a crap statistic. I'm just gonna say that off. It's
I
another.
don't know how much I
statistic
could
that
get for
lies.
mine, honestly.
Depends on what city or country we're talking about.
And whether you're looking at goat farmers or not as your potential buyers.
Oh man, there's so many dark jokes in my head that I don't want to share on a podcast.
So supposedly the statistic is it's around like $250,000 is what the kid will cost over the 17 to 18 years that you have them.
But
So-
there's such a problem with that because it assumes off the bat that every single kid requires brand new everything when they're born. So if you have 4 kids, you're going to reuse the crib. You're going to reuse beds and clothes. And so like kid 2 is way cheaper than kid 1. Kid 3 is even cheaper. And you're assuming
Depends on who the spouse is. I had to
Yeah.
dispose of a lot of clothing because people didn't want to see it in a box in the garage. So I disagree with that statement.
it's at least
I
not
don't think that we
foolproof.
would have any people alive if that was true. I could be
Yeah.
wrong. I mean,
Yeah.
look, kids are going to cost you something, right? They're going to cost a lot. I think this is where parenting comes in and you get to determine whether that's an investment or not, or a good one or not.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many factors when it comes to thinking about the money. I mean, you can have health issues like Barbara. You've got some kids that have medical
them.
issue. All of
And
them.
that's the thing. I mean, you never could have planned for. But I was thinking about it too. You gotta if you're gonna say, okay, it's too expensive to have kids, then you sort of have to spin the numbers out how much it's gonna cost you to not have kids and to have to, in your old age to have to hire someone to come in and change your diaper. And I'm just saying, like, if you've got kids, you're gonna save money on the other end.
Yeah.
Wrong phrase to use. But yeah,
think-
no, I mean, like the medical expenses are real. That's
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
I think that there's well, go ahead, John.
there's so many things to think of, though. You've got health insurance. You've got the medical on top of that. If anything goes crazy, if they make you have an aneurysm, like I feel like I've had a few times. I mean, there's just so many factors to it. Now, think about this. If you go through a divorce, how much is that going to cost you? Because now you've got it. Now
Are
you've
you
got to
blaming the children?
that is what it sounded like.
what?
That's what I heard. He's
Sounds like you're
the
blaming your
children
kids for
the
your
divorce.
expensive
No, no, no. But instead of losing half my stuff, I now have to fight to have some kind of relationship with a kid, right? So now you've got to pay more to fight this child custody. Whereas if you have just money involved or stuff, I mean, come on, that's an easy split down the middle type thing, unless you want to fight about a boat. But
I'm gonna say I don't think divorce is ever an easy split down the middle, and if anything, maybe kids veer you from that further. And I'm not saying that there's never cause for divorce. I think there is, but I think if you're able to view it as more than stuff, there's something about the assumption here that it's about money, or that that the cost of the kids is a hard, like, okay, can I afford to have kids? I feel like maybe it's the wrong question.
Well, but that's what people are thinking, right? Like
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard that from a lot of people, like, oh, well, when I get this and this taken care of, then I'll be ready in college and all of this stuff. And I think that those are great things to plan for, right? Because we're talking about, planning to have a child or not planning to have a child. Sometimes, a child happens accidentally somehow, and we think, oh, well, we weren't really prepared for this. I would say generally this is often like your own opinion of what you're ready for, right? Like some people are like, oh, I need that 100 grand in the bank to pay for a wedding or a college before the kid's born. And other people are like, man, I just like to get out of the projects. But I think that the reality is, we've looked up some of these statistics that I'm sure John remembers. Like, so many people are living paycheck to paycheck. So many people don't have any savings. I don't think that we can point to, like, well, they all have children, so it must be the children making them broke. I think probably we're all spending the money that we have to some degree. We're all comfortable with some amount of debt or something, right? To where it's like, if I'm honest, if I wasn't spending money on the children, I would be blowing it on a motorcycle or living in a trailer park with a Ferrari. So I agree that price is something to consider. I think it's more about, like, do I want to give up motorcycle racing and have, diaper changing duty at 3 a.m.?
But see, I think more in depth, like what kind of lifestyle are you wanting your kids to have growing up, right? Some kids struggle and they live in a 2-bedroom apartment, right? There's 3 kids and 2 adults, or maybe just 1 adult. I mean, it's tight headquarters if you got to do something like that. But do you want them involved in sports? Do you want private schooling? Do you want homeschooling?
Sure.
There's so much more involved in what do you want? How do you want Christmas? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, are you just going to spend $50 on each kid? Do you want
Why
to
not?
make the limit higher? Like what?
How do you say 10? Like, I think
Yeah.
that there's a slippery
People
slope
spending
down
more
here.
than that?
Yeah. Honestly, I'm observing this. We've got 4 kids, and like you said, they're all medically somewhat fragile, and so we got plunged into medical debt that I had no idea was even coming. We got married when we were 20, and Ava was born when I was 22. So the thing is, I have known people that were way better off financially. Their kids had their own rooms. They were in private school. Like, on paper, it looked better. And I'm telling you, their kids are not happier than mine. So I think that the question has to go bigger than the numbers. It's got to be, are we actually saying that I shouldn't bring a life into the world unless I can send them to private school and spend $500 every Christmas? We're saying, like, are we actually comfortable putting a price tag on
Well,
the life?
clearly that has to do with something, because if you look at the age range of when people get married, like you brought up in our pre-show conversation, the range is actually very much of an incline at this point. I mean, you're talking from 1950, it was down to 20-year-old average, and now we're sitting at 2017 is this statistic. It's now at 27. So that's
for when they have kids.
uh-huh.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
No,
having children,
sorry,
not
that
getting
was
married.
marriage. That was marriage.
Oh, okay.
I mean, and I'm going to shift gears a little bit on you guys and go back to your first question, John, about, like, what do we think about when we have kids? So I dated Heather starting when we were 13, which is a little strange or weird compared to most people's relationships, especially when you look at that statistic. So we got married when she was a freshman in college. We were both 19, and we were just doing us and having a blast. And like, her dad was freaking out because he's like, you can't get married when you're 19 because you'll have kids and then your career will be over. And it's like, she's never had to work a day, really. I mean, I guess when we started the business, she's worked quite a bit, but it's because we're trying to do a little something different. But those years that we were just doing us and having fun and doing the motorcycle racing and the traveling and the hiking and all that stuff, like at some point, even though we had this awesome relationship and still have an awesome relationship, there was this hole, which is strange to me to even say, but it's just like one day we're just sitting there on the couch, like we had this extra time and silence that we should fill with something. And which is kind of like a weird feeling, but like that's how it went. We were like, I think it's time. And it took us a little while. But then we had the kids. So I think that, to contrast the money conversation, like let's talk about opportunity lost, and the things that you can't put a price tag on. And, you can see my sign up here, punching depression. I mean, there's certainly a fulfillment level, and maybe you guys can speak into that, of even though you're pulling your hair out and whatever the challenge is in parenting, I think that there's a level of fulfillment there that would be hard pressed. And my oldest are fixing to turn 12, so I'm still like a very young, I have young children, so I've yet to see the graduation, walk them down the aisle, any of those things, and I'm still feeling like there's this huge fulfillment that I don't know how you put a price tag on, like your joy and your peace and your happiness in life. So I don't know. I mean, how do y'all feel about that?
Well, I mean, you kind of mentioned two different questions. You had the fulfillment side, but then you also had, well, what other things besides the money? And you mentioned as well, passing up on opportunities. Well, most CEOs have got the empty house by that point, correct?
Yeah.
So as a younger person, spending more of your free time with your kids doesn't allow you to take on more responsibilities at work at times, depending the job and everything. So that's one of the things I think about, like what other opportunities could I have taken? Take for example, I think I've heard my wife say before, if she didn't have kids, she could be a flight attendant flying around the world doing what she loves, not having to worry about money, not having to worry about the kids, just that I'm going to have a crazy husband sitting at home by himself, bored out of his mind. So, but to that I say, hey, get me a fishing boat and I'll be okay. So,
But got a solution. Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are some things you'll give up. I mean, even my current job, they've had some stuff come up and they're like, hey, we need your help doing this. And I'm like, no, I've got, volleyball with Katie. There's no way. Mm-hmm. So to speak on your other part of fulfillment, that's one of the best things that I think has come out of my life, because not only am I getting fulfillment out of some of these joys that I've had. I mean, take for example, Morgan and me, we did skiing, and it was just us two. Man, it was great to watch the progression and her go from like, I'm scared, I don't want to go on this, to, screaming down the hill, I'm gonna die, to finally I get a video of her going down half the slope by herself. Everybody's flying by and she just coasts right in, no problem, doesn't fall, nothing. I almost get leveled because I'm not paying attention to everybody flying in, but I mean, that's just one. Then you've got Katie doing the sports that she's done. I mean, just last year or the year before. She caught her team up in a relay event.
Mm-hmm.
It was the mile relay. And to see her run down all these other people running in that heat, like she was the last leg, and she gets that stick and she hauls butt. Halfway through her lap, she's caught everybody and she's tracking down, trying to catch somebody else. And I mean, she didn't win first place because that lead team was just monstrous. But to see her do so much and then to check her times at the end and go, holy crap, she had the best time out of the group. And I mean, you can't explain that feeling as a father to see something like that happen. So what about you?
What do you think, Barbara?
I think that love has to spill out onto the people around us. So I think that if what I hear when I think about it, I'm a CEO, but I've got the empty house, right? I'm able to do whatever I want to in business. There's an emptiness there that I think you're not winning, right? Because the only person you figured out how to love was yourself. And I think that as soon as you are deciding to love another person, you are signing up to die. You are signing up to give up what you want for somebody else. And in that, I think we get so much back. And so that's what it's like. Yeah. Were we too broke to get married? Probably. Were we too broke to have kids? Yeah. More than we realized. And I don't have a single regret about that, because I can look at this and say, if I die tomorrow, my life will have been chock full. I look at the generation now that doesn't get married till their late 20s, maybe they're not having kids till their 30s. There's something that I think we all perceive that's inherently selfish about the millennial mindset. Like, we joke about it a little bit, but really we're talking a lot about, am I fulfilling myself? Am I getting to do what I want to do? Have I met all of my goals? But really, your best version of yourself has nothing to do with yourself. And I think that's what kids really expose, is you are your best when you are living for the good of somebody else.
Yeah, no, I
don't know. I don't know how to take that, because when I think back to like Katie, one of the best things she's ever said kind of is an insult to me, right? So she said to me one time, she said, Dad, you'll never have to worry about me having sex before marriage, because I learned from all of your mistakes. So like, you hear what every dad wants to hear, and then you're like, wow, she just called me a loser.
Well, she's probably, what I hear in that is that there's a close enough bond between you two that she feels like she can say what she's feeling, which I think.
Well, she got grounded. Don't get me wrong.
I mean, I think that that's a testimony to having a good relationship. And that's, I think, to just veer off the path, I think that is, my opinion, is a good thing about parenting is authenticity. And it's like, for some reason, my children just want to hear about all of my mistakes and stupid things. They're like, Dad, tell us about all the dumb things that you did. And I'm like, why don't you ask about like something that I'm proud of, or like a single thing that maybe I did good?
They do that on a daily basis, don't they?
Lame. Like, I want to hear about the time that you got in this big fight and yelled at people. And I'm like, that was me at my worst, like literally at my worst. Why are you making me tell that story? But I think what we're kind of dancing around the word is meaning. So I think that, like, while I love Range Rovers and expensive yachts and helicopters and motorcycle racing, and like, I mean, you could look at my joys and say Alton's pretty materialistic, except for the fact that I know that that there's no meaning in these things, and that the meaning is in sharing that. And so if you have a spouse that you can share meaningful times and experiences with, then that's good. I think that children are on like another level with that. And I can say, like, by the time I was 25, I felt like I was kind of Scrooging out on Christmas. Not that I didn't like Christmas. I'm just like, it's just another day. I mean, that's like, I'm not the holiday guy, pretty lame. But now that my kids are doing Christmas, I'm like, it's totally rekindled my love for the holiday. I'm like, what was it the other day? It's barely December. And I watched, y'all know I don't watch TV. I kid you not. I sat
Until you
down.
got my YouTube app. You got my YouTube TV login. Now you watch it all the time, don't you?
I've never opened that thing. I sat down last Sunday and I'm like, hey, let's do a Christmas movie. And I watched The Santa Claus. And no joke, I watched the next two the same day. I watched like 6 hours of 3 movies. And I looked at Heather and I'm like, Heather, I don't remember ever watching 3 movies in my life. And anyway, just saying that, like, sharing that Christmas memory and spirit with the little ones is like, makes me sit there on my butt and watch TV all day, which is very atypical, but like watching them enjoy that and get in the mood is it's that memory, which I think at the end of our lives, really that's all we have, right? Is the memories that we create.
But you got to walk that line though, because even I have found myself, having kids, everything you do, like every vacation you go on, every trip you do, it has to be family. That's what I got stuck in. The problem is, if you're married, you still have to have that one-on-one with your spouse.
For sure.
So there's that fine line, and I really struggle with it because all that runs through my head is, no, every trip's going to be family because I only have, 18 years with these, and then they're gone. Yeah. And then I never have it again. So
but if you expect to get to the end of 18 years and your wife be like, yeah, you had 18 years to invest in me. Right. I mean,
yeah, and it happens.
It does happen. That's a nightmare to me, to have my kids be grown and realize that you don't, I mean, there's only one relationship that you actually keep in your life, right? Like, you're going to move out of your parents' house, ideally. Got that, millennials? Move out of your parents' house.
Move out of your parents' house, yes.
That's the deciding factor. Yeah.
Come on.
But then your kids will move out. Like, it's that the strong marriage is the kids' happiest place.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that's why I'm taking my kids to John's house this weekend. And Heather and I are on a little weekend retreat. Nice. It's going to be wonderful. Thanks, John.
We're going to have to put on hold. I think I have corona, so.
It's cool. My kids, they're pretty resilient.
The key is not to test. Then you'll never know.
No, actually, we're going over to y'all's place. We're bringing our whole clan over, and we're going to try to see what kind of stuff we can break at your house.
Yeah, y'all stay tuned because John thinks he can cook salmon, but I'm going to destroy his little baby wimpy salmon with my super duper salmon powers.
So Barb,
and I'm going to do it in front of the kids. You see how I pulled that all back in? Really, that's what having children is about. Like,
hey, Dad, tell us about that time that you beat John up at our fish fry.
Remember that time when you and John were smacking each other with those slabs of salmon? Yes, that was a great time.
That time you used to have a podcast, but now you don't.
That's hilarious.
No, so what's going on is, Katie has her birthday coming up, and she had requested that we have salmon. And she wants salmon tacos in particular. We have this very specific way that we cook them. And so Alton's like, hey, we want to hang out with y'all this weekend. Just so happens to be the same day that Katie has her birthday dinner she wants to do.
Which I knew that.
Because he's such a great friend. But so we're planning this out, and he's like, well, why don't you just have everybody come over and we'll do it here and we'll celebrate her birthday and everything. And of course, Katie's like, heck yeah, we like hanging out with the hills. But so then he calls me up a day later and he's like, well, are you really stuck on cooking it in the oven or can we like barbecue it? And I'm like, I don't know if your crap's going to mess up our taste. So,
Keep talking about it because you're going to be eating these words in about next podcast time.
so now it's turned into a
Yeah.
competition. So
Tune
if you're
in
coming to
next week.
Texas, you need to kick it up because
For the big
happening
big
this weekend.
salmon battle.
Yeah.
So are there like
Mhm.
cedar planks involved? Or is that just a Washington thing?
He
No,
says he's going to
totally.
use cedar planks.
Yeah. I'm going to introduce John to the bomb salmon. I don't even like fish, and I'll eat this salmon like it's going out of style. So,
Okay.
yeah, so that's going to be exciting. So back to our topic, other than bragging to your children that you have, I would say, in deciding to have children or not, I got to talk about your spouse and who you're having them with. Because the child,
That's a tough topic because nowadays there's so many broken families. There's people that aren't married, there's people that
Mhm.
are married, and then there's people that are adopting like the LGBT community.
Yeah.
So there's so many solutions.
I think that, I remember a guy telling me something. He was married, had children, and he was like, I forget what I was saying, something immature and dumb. I'm certain of it. But he was patient with me and he's like, Alton, sometimes you don't really know how people are going to respond as parents. And I'm like, I'm the boss, and he's like, what happens, Alton, if you have children and one day they're doing something like totally out of line and your parents spanked you and you think spanking's okay, you go spank the child, and then the wife's like, why are you beating my child? And now divorce is on the table because there wasn't that conversation. I think that that's a way to illustrate the point, but I think that that's only one little piece of that puzzle, that you shouldn't just be hooking up with somebody and having a kid, in my opinion. Like, surprise here. You need to get to know this person as best you can and their like philosophy and paradigms about raising children. You know, Heather and I had kind of decided 2 kids were going to be good, and then we got a surprise third. So there's some things that like you you might that are unanticipated that are going to come up. So that person who you're having children with is important, I think, and should weigh heavy on the decision.
It's another kind of protection in marriage, though, too. Like, these are all things that you ideally would be talking about before you got married. So if you're having kids before you get married, you're missing one of the protective steps as far as. No,
Your
go ahead,
kids
Jeff.
are going to be watching this later, Alton. One of them's going to go, "What? I was a surprise?"
Like, we love surprises. That's good.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad thing, you know. Honestly, like we were pretty excited about it. Um, for us, we wanted children, and even thought about adopting, and I'm still thinking about adopting, just kind of like maybe later. I think I've got a pretty crazy house right now. But Heather and I have thought about adopting like maybe some older kids. I mean, I don't have a son, I have 4 daughters, and I wonder, like, the question that you didn't ask is like, what's wrong with society? I think it's a lack of fathers. So maybe it's a little different than the question of should I have kids, but does the world need good fathers? I think it certainly does. And so if you're a man out there wondering if you're going to have children, I think you need to make a decision to be the best father you can and look for those role models and be able to stand up and be a man and not a chump loser father that wrecks everything, because that's like a huge issue, I think, of screwing people up. You look at people that are messed up, go look at their dad, see, if there's not some sort of a reflection there or something.
So now, do I get to rant at the women now? Because you ranted at the men. So can I rant at the women?
You can, but I'm pretty feeling strongly that I blame these crap fathers for a lot
Yeah,
of
no,
it.
me too. I'm saying to these women, do not think that having kids is going to change the crap man that you picked. Don't
Yeah.
pick a crap man. Like, that's not, that is probably the most tragic thing that I see around me. I see lots of people that, yeah, they end up having kids and they're having to be single parents, and that's hard, but they jump in and they love it. You know, they take good care of these kids. The ones that kill me is where it's like, okay, we're financially stable and we have planned this out because I think that having children will save my marriage. I'm married to a bad guy, but if we have kids, he'll become what I need him to be. That is the thing that I'm like, seriously, go find a good man and then go have kids. Like, get married and have kids. I'm with you. You need to actually, the women need to not date guys that are loser dads. Like,
Yeah, I mean, divorces really do affect your kids. If you don't believe that, I'm sorry, you're crazy. But you know, when you look at divorce statistics, some of the main reasons are finances, and then arguments that are, you know, part of the problem is religious views. If you both have different religious views, that can be a constant struggle, not just between you and her. It's also going to lead into your kids, because some people don't want their kids to grow up in certain churches.
Oh yeah, and I mean I see it regularly that, you know, like mom believes this and dad believes that, you know, and it's like going to this church this week and that church, or there's like this I suspect like some amount of undermining at the house, right? Where I mean, look, we can't all see eye to eye on everything, and you know, maybe that's kind of what we're talking about. You know, if we want to put it all under one umbrella, is like do a little investigating here, you know, like when you come together with someone, they're fulfilling some need that you have, some hole, they're filling it. And um, like as I've gotten older, I've learned that you need to imagine that dream person that you want. And then you need to look at yourself and you need to see, am I the type of person that can attract my dream person that I want? And if you're not, then, you know, whatever, get smarter, make more money, like lose some weight. I don't know what it is that you think is going to attract them. Like, get a boat. That's pretty much, you know, if Heather ever leaves me, I'm like, well, I'm just going to get a boat and hopefully some girls will wind up in it, because that's about my only strategy, really.
So
that went a
Can't
totally
date
different
any
direction than what I
jujitsu
was
girls.
picturing.
They'll just beat me up. Anyway,
what about your thoughts when it comes to single individuals wanting kids? Thoughts on that? Or are you completely against it?
I am completely against it. I'll be that person.
Why so?
Because having kids is not all about you. So it turns out that kids, you know, it's not just that it's going to hurt the kids to grow up with only one parent. Now, does it work? Can it be worked? Yeah, it can. Things can turn out for great. But I think if you're talking like, I mean, and I'm assuming you're talking about planning, like, okay, I'm either going to go have someone to have kids with and raise them by myself, or I'm going to adopt as a single person. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. Wow, I got mammed in the podcast. That's different. Yeah, I think that you got to look at the why. Why are you trying to fill this hole with another human being that is totally dependent on you? It doesn't feel equal. It feels pretty doggone selfish, which I think would be the opposite of what parenting has to be.
and what is that?
Selfless. I mean, you are not going to the picture in your, like, if the picture in your head is, I always wanted to be a mom, right?
Is
Like,
it selfish to want to adopt as a single parent? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Why?
Kind of, a little bit. Well, because like as a single parent, I'm saying I'd want to look at the why. I'd want to know the why. Why do you think that it's better, maybe fostering where you're giving them a safe spot to be until they can get to, a home that can be stable. I think kids need a mom and a dad.
I let me chime in here. I think that we're kind of talking around the ideal, what we believe is an ideal scenario. Like, look, if it's, if you're single and, like your niece ends up without her parents and you adopt the niece because you're in a family, I think that that's not the same question as, all men are losers. I'm going to raise this kid without a man.
Thank you. That's the clarification I needed. Yeah, no, that's totally true. Emergency situations aside, I guess I'm picturing like, 20 something, I haven't met the right guy yet. So I'm just going to go do this on my own because I want to be a mom. I'm
going to have to rant a little bit on this because I've been feeling pretty strongly. I think that at least the news is portraying this, or maybe I'm just like sensitive to it. All right. I admitted it. I'm a sensitive guy.
In what aspect?
All right. Look, it's this masculinity, femininity confusion. I think that we're all talking about like, what's his face? Just Styles, Harry Styles, just on his album cover, he's in this like floofy dress talking about how he's expressing his masculinity. And I'm like, bro, I don't know how you think that is expressing masculinity. Maybe like your own style or something, but that is not manly to me. Those are dresses that women wear. So when I think about what is ideal for children is that they need a strong, masculine, manly, I said it, not a soft man. They need a man's man influencing them in their life. I think that's important for daughters and sons, both. Now let's look at that other side of the coin. They need a woman that is teaching them how to be a woman and like do woman things and see what that looks like. I believe it's hard enough to raise kids and teach them everything that they want with two parents. With one, how could you're going to have to take on both roles to do that, I think, to teach your children properly. So if I'm in that scenario where Heather dies and I have to raise my children, my daughters, like I'm gonna have to find some feminine role models for them. I told Heather the other day, she's doing all this Christmas shopping. I'm like, if you die, I'm totally outsourcing this. I'm gonna have to go to my friend Shauna and be like, Shauna, can you buy all this stuff? Cause like, I'm just don't have it in me.
Oh, you gotta have the period talk with them too.
Well, I own that like a boss, man.
Yeah,
I already did that. So, I mean, I don't know what they thought of it, but I thought I did a great job. So, yeah,
Well,
but exactly, right?
So Barb, your response, it being selfish or not, I don't totally disagree. And I would, say the same as Alton did. And that's really, look at the statistics of kids growing up without both sets of parents. There's issues with those kids. It's
I mean, at the best of circumstances, our kids are going to have issues, right?
Right.
Yeah. Especially with me as the dad. I mean, come on. But so that's the thing I would be more concerned with. Now, what about some of these other fears? I want to go back to the fears because there's some things that people don't think about or realize when they're thinking about having kids. I think my sister just had her kid and she started to realize some of the fears that I had when my kids were younger. A simple fear. When they stop making noises at night, you freak out as a parent. I know I did. And that's, are they still breathing? And then I lose sleep because they're not making noise. And then when they're making noise, I can't go to sleep. So there's other fears that you run into. And then even something simple is, should I let them go play outside in the front yard or not? Because someone might kidnap them if I'm not watching. Or then as they get older, can they go hang out with their friends? Can they drive a car? I don't want them to die in a car accident. And I think that's probably why I have so many white hairs. But I think there's a lot of fears that people don't think about ahead of time that I think could play into some decision making as to
So
whether they
you're
can handle it.
Are you saying that the fears would be like if they thought about it in advance, it'd be reason enough not to have kids?
I don't know if it's enough to not have kids, but it's definitely something to think about because I mean, to me, and I could be just over paranoid, but I think about those things and it's like, it's freaky.
Well, it's I'll tell you the one of the most scary moments I had was when my twins were being born. So I was not a father. And then I'm like, I'm a good guy. People are telling me I'm going to make a great dad. I got this. I'm from Texas. What's up? Like kids. I'm an older dad. I'm not in high school. I'm quite mature. And then, so it was a C-section. And I'm waiting in the waiting room and I'm, talking myself up. I got this. Heather's going to be fine. Don't worry about it. They bring me in there and then 2 seconds later, they're pulling kids out, well, pulled out Taylor, pulled out Ava, and they like set them, in two beds, kind of maybe 10 feet apart. And in that moment, like I'm standing there going, which table do I go to first? And what do I do when I get there? There's like this wet, screaming child. I don't know what to do. And then like it or not, that was when all the responsibility hit my brain. And I was like, oh, this is my problem now. This is how they feel and everything from now on, their life, this is all on dad now. So I better make a decision and get my crap together. So I think that may happen with dads, is that there's this little amount of surreal, like, man, my wife, she's putting on a lot of weight, and then bam, the kid's there. And you're like, oh, there was a kid in there the whole time. Like,
Good news.
she wasn't
Yeah.
making that up.
Kids are
And then
hilarious.
that responsibility hits you. I think that that's a good thing. I think that that's part of growth as a human, to be willing to take that on and to not be scared, because nobody's ready. It's like when I quit my job, wasn't ready.
Yeah.
Hey, guess what? I'm still running a business.
That's
I'm
what I
more
keep
ready than I
thinking.
was.
Yeah.
Can we say that?
If we thought about all the fears, if we actually could experience that before we got there, there's no way any of us would do any of this.
We wouldn't do
Like,
anything.
We wouldn't
We
do
wouldn't
anything.
start a podcast. We'd be like,
No.
well, I might spill my drink on my mic and
Wouldn't drive a car. Wouldn't, like, all these things. So
trying
I
to
kind of
make
feel
fun of
like
my
it's,
salmon.
that's probably true. But don't you think? I mean, I'm not saying like don't count the cost of what's coming or don't, but fear is a bad decision maker.
Yes, but it's some things you gotta. Okay, so here's one thing I think of, especially after our show with Wendy, right? She's a genealogist and she helps people find their biological families. Well, during that conversation, Barb, you had talked about your kids, and no matter what you and your husband do, husband number one, let's get that right. Husband number one, no matter what y'all do, you're going to have kids that have health issues, right?
Yeah, my kids have it. It's a magical genetic condition that we can't find anywhere in either side of our families, but all four of my kids have it. So yes.
So it's hearing stories like that where I'm like, holy crap, if I have kids like that, I don't know that I can handle that.
But see, that's what's funny. Had you asked me before my oldest or my second or any of them were born, I might have said the same thing. Like, I don't understand how people could do this. But it turns out that there's a lot of things that you're not equipped to do until you need to be able to do it. And I guess that's the thing I look at. And it's like, I don't think that I had any special wiring that enabled me to, like, yeah, okay, sleep deprivation is my superpower. And that's true. I thrive on very little sleep, but it's, I think it's part of being human that we become equipped as we need it. Why would you know how to be a special needs parent if you didn't have a special needs kid? Well, you wouldn't. But you're going to get there and you're going to decide, and maybe that's where it comes down to. You're going to decide that this is worthwhile, that this human life has value, and ergo, what am I going to do? Like Alton said, like, you're in that moment, decision has to be made. Who am I going to be? And go, because I don't feel like at that point there's not a choice. What are you going to do?
I think that, just to further speak into what you're saying, Barbara, if I haven't said it on the podcast, I'll say it again. If I've said it, I'll say it again. I think that we all have, like, I don't know if I necessarily believe in fate, but I do believe in the best versions of ourselves. And I kind of believe that God has a purpose for each one of us and has gifted us with certain gifts that allow us to fulfill that purpose, or allow us to let's just say accomplish things in life. And I think that by nature and our desire to, if we don't have a desire to procreate, then we still have a desire to practice, and that's a natural thing. And so to me, children are kind of natural in that order. Other things just kind of get in the way. Now, I think that me having 4 daughters, in my opinion, is a way that, blessings that God has given me to help fulfill whatever purpose it is that I have. So I would say, while there's definitely some things like, maybe I had to give up my motorcycle racing career for a little bit, there's probably a higher purpose that I'm chasing now. And those 4 daughters and wife of mine are helping me become the person who I need to be to fulfill that. And Barbara, I would say the same for you. Like, if you didn't have the children, with the disabilities that they do, like, would you have written that book, or would you,
That's what I'm saying. Like, I think that they are a huge part of it. I was thinking about this because it's not part of a story that gets told often. But when my oldest, we didn't know that she had this genetic condition at birth. She was about 9 months old. And we had just found out that we were pregnant with my second. And it was, bar none, the most frightening pregnancy I'd ever had. And there's a gap between my kids' ages, because I thought what John's saying. Like, I think if I have a third feeding tube in the house, I'll crack. Like, there's not a way I'll survive this. And I've reached an interesting point where I realized that I can talk about trusting God with all of my life, but if I am genuinely flipped out about the idea, like, if he gives me another kid, then I've got a hole here. I've got a blind spot. And so then Archie came along, and the girls will tell you, like, he's the magic boy. We haven't been hospitalized since he got born. And I think that's obviously, I'm not in a superstitious way, but just to say, like, I think God's plans for us are a lot bigger than what we have for ourselves. And so we kind of have to go back and ask the right questions. Are children a good thing? Can we say that children are a good thing without caveats? I think yes.
Well, Alton, you mentioned the word procreate. Do y'all have that opinion that there are several people out there that shouldn't be having kids?
I certainly can.
We're on a podcast, so we got to hear you talk.
I'm nodding vocally.
Non-committal nod.
No, I certainly would say that, in certain circumstances, I would look at people's lives, and I think I would not go as maybe so far as to, like, judge and be like, we're going to neuter you because you don't deserve kids. But I would say it's not wise. And there are going to have to be some changes if you want your child to live a successful life, you know? Although, you know, if you look at a lot of the successful people, they're, you know, fell on a lot of hard knocks. And because of those hard knocks, it's made them who they needed to be. And so I think it's at some level we try to control so much, and we want to make everything comfortable. You know, that was another thing I was yelling at my wife for yesterday. Everybody's looking for comfort, comfort, comfort. Well, you know, that's going to be hard, or, you know, oh, this is luxurious and nice. Nobody wants to pick up the weight and like be strong. They just don't want to have to lift the weight. Well, we live as humans, and sometimes the weight is there and you have to pick it up. And if you haven't been training at all, then, you know, you're going to have a lot of discomfort trying to get that weight up. And so I think with children, sometimes we feel that heavy weight, you know, but I think that weight is what makes us stronger. But to your question, John, I would definitely feel sorry for some children, and do feel sorry for some children.
Yeah. I think it depends on if we're talking idealistic world, like if we're planning in advance, are there people that should not on purpose have kids? Probably. That said, I think that if you find yourself pregnant, I read this is going to sound appalling. I'm really sorry about that. But I've read this really interesting statistic. It's for you, John. That of women who end up pregnant through rape, the ones that keep the baby, none of them regret it.
Really?
This is something really, like, the statistics are jarring. There's women that have a lot of trauma, like post-traumatic stress after aborting a baby, even though, you know, they've been said, you know, it was through rape. We justify it, right, as a society.
Well, they say they don't regret it, but what about some of the other statistics, like what the kid is still dealing with through the time of being a kid, as well as are there any effects later on?
I think that you end up with all the same effects that you see in a single parent. I mean, the kid doesn't need my kids don't have great details about how they were conceived. They don't need that. And I think that's true in rape too. Like, this is not something that we talk about at Thanksgiving. So I think that it's the same.
You can make that a ritual.
I suppose you could. Yeah. Go traditions.
I was going to say, I haven't explained it to my kids, but I think that there was this one time. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, it's you sleepwalking. It's okay. Yeah, no, I don't think that there are different results beyond what you would see with single parent households in general. I just thought that was really interesting. Even something that, like, we're talking a really unplanned pregnancy of the most violent kind, and still the child itself, they don't regret the child. And I think that's interesting.
Yeah, I would like to see some of the other statistics. I mean, that is very interesting because it seems like that's one of the bigger reasons why people have abortions is due to rape. Yeah. So I'd like to know more about that. What else do you think people need to consider before we do our deciding factor?
You have anything, Barbara?
Nothing that would fit in the show. I mean, I'm really tempted to dive. One of the things that I hear people say, maybe I'm just hanging in the wrong circles, but they talk about things like zero population growth, like environmentalism. We're killing the planet with all these doggone people. But I think that's its own show. So no, I don't think so.
Well, there are some countries that want you to have more than 2 kids because the theory is over the next few decades, if you continue to have more than 2 kids, then your ethnicity that would grow. So like over in the Middle East, they actually talk about that. Like if they have 6 kids in each family, that eventually they would take over each state or country, state. They can take over each country. Now that was just something I read a few years back, but that was one of those thoughts. So
I guess if I was going to add anything else, another kind of point that we've danced around is like your age.
You're really in a dancing mood today. What's going on?
We watched Laura Cleary or whatever her name is, Pamela
Pumpkin.
Pumpkin. Yeah, Pamela Pumpkin.
Pumpkin.
I'm inspired to get my dance moves on. But your age, like, look, if you're 15 years old and listening to this show, probably you could handle it fine. But is it better to maybe wait a few years? I would say, yeah, I think age is an important piece of this. And I think it's okay to say that I want to have, XYZ accomplishments before children. But I also think that my opinion is like starting to have kids at 30, is that, just my, unsolicited opinion is too late. Like, I think that it's just like, man, you've been messing around for too long, have some kids while you're young. Yeah. You're going to be like,
you're going to be so tired.
Well, and it's the grandchildren too, like spending that time that I did with my grandfather. I'm like, man, really, the grandparents, that's where it's at. It's not about the parents. And when he died, he was on hospice. When he died, I was holding his hand. It was not his children that were in that bed with him. It was his grandson and his granddaughter-in-law, or whatever you want to call it. So it's something to think about if you're on the fence of whether it's even, up for discussion or not, right? Is like, you're going to be old and on that deathbed. And if you don't have any children, then you're certainly not going to have any children around your deathbed. You might have some friends, wouldn't have any grandchildren either. And I think that it's better to not make decisions when you're young that are going to really have those bad consequences when you're old and you want to change your mind and you can't.
Well, age was always a thing for me. Is I always wanted to be young enough to where I could do all the traveling, the sports, spending a whole lot of time doing all that with them. So I really wanted to start having kids around the age 25.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when it ended up happening, whether by choice or not. But I really liked it. And I honestly would say, to me, 25 is really a good age to start having kids. The only problem is you have to really figure out, kind of like what we talked about, is where in your life are you? Are there still things you want to accomplish before then? But I definitely think if your kids are turning 18 and you're 60, that's, you're not going to be doing a lot of physical activities with them, more than likely, throughout their childhood.
I also think there's something to be said, and then we could do deciding factor. Something to be said from a female standpoint. It's a lot easier to have kids when you're 20 than it is when you're 30. Just saying.
What about 40?
Yeah, I don't even want to think about that. I'm tired thinking about that. I had some friends that her and her mother were pregnant at the same time. And I thought, that's horrible. I mean, I just don't think that sounds like fun personally, but that's biologically, I think it's okay to admit that 20 years old, you're going to have an easier time chasing that kid and not noticing that you haven't slept in 2 weeks.
Kicking and Screaming. If you haven't watched it. It's Will Ferrell, and he has a brother that is his son's age. Great movie. Watch it. Kicking and Screaming, Will Ferrell. And the other thing, just to your point, Barbara, Heather and I were watching some show. Well, Heather was watching it. I jumped in, and it was like one of these teen pregnancy things. And it was a 16-year-old girl birthing a baby. Girl doesn't even break a sweat. I mean, you wouldn't even
Seriously.
know. Like, if it was just shoulder up, she's just like chilling. And no kidding, like the baby's dad is in the bed with her, like trying to be a man, but he's 15 and he's like crying and she's consoling him. It's like so insane. But yeah. Anyway,
I'm not saying
I can't
that we
blame
should
him because
all-
I've been in that room and I've been in that bed and I know what it's like.
Got to bring snacks for the men. You always got to bring snacks for the men.
Man.
So.
All right, guys. Deciding factor.
Play the music.
Now it's time for our deciding factor.
All right. Should I have kids? Is the question. I hate going first sometimes. It just
I'll
gives me
like
so
going
much.
Just be like ladies first today, Barbara.
Yeah, let's do it. Barb, you're up. Let's go.
Didn't Alton introduce himself as Barb today? I should go,
Oh.
Alton.
You want me to go first? I'll go first. In an interesting turn of events, I would say that I am speaking out of a place where I am so fulfilled in life right now. I am so blessed right now. I have all of my needs taken care of, and my cup is just running over with all of the things that money can't buy. I have them in abundance. One of those things are healthy, smart, Alec children that I love. And while people can use children as an excuse to limit what their capacity is, I think that that is an excuse. I quit my 9 to 5, professional job and started a business at my house with 4 daughters and a dog and cats and the mother living in my house and all of this other crap. So it can be done. And I'm very much of the belief that we're all going to die someday. And, the things that we said and the like nice Range Rovers and Ferraris and motorcycles that we had aren't going to matter. What's going to matter is legacy and what we leave behind. That's your impact. And some of that could be, a fancy invention or a contribution or whatever. But I think a huge part of that is your children. And so that's very meaningful to me, is legacy and impact. And so I think to have a lot of impact, children in my mind are a part of that, and they give my life so much meaning, and they've made me become so much more of just a better human than I would have ever been without them. They're so motivating to me. And I think if that's the life that you want to live, is one of impact and contribution and of love and of, trying to leave your mark, then children have to be a piece of that puzzle. So live a life that is worthy of contributing. And so I think in that aspect, it's a great idea. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
So I'm a little torn on this because there's a whole lot of statistics that go screaming through my head when it comes to this type of topic. And then there's my personal experience that I've had. So to summarize it in general, I had my oldest daughter outside of marriage and then had to strip the rights away from that woman. So I played a single dad for a little bit. I did end up getting married, and then I ended up having a divorce. So it was in and out, and basically been a single dad for quite some time in regards to that. Having some of the discussions with my daughter, it's great to hear her say, and this was just recently this year, we're in the car and she says, "Dad, I know you're upset because I explained to her that I feel like I failed as a father to her." But she explained to me, she said, "You know what? We had something at school where they asked us questions about our family tree and how if we had to choose to lose one of our parents, which would we choose?" Which was kind of crazy. They would ask you that at school. I know, all y'all lit up. But
and homeschool kids are weird.
Yeah,
Sorry.
exactly. No, but she said to me, she said, "Dad, even though I basically grew up with no mother, I'm good because you taught me a lot. You were always there at every sporting event except for some of these this year due to COVID, and which, oh, don't get me started on that. But she said, you've given me so much. You know, I see the good and the bad in the world. I get that you may be hurt because you didn't give me everything you wanted, but that's okay. We had a blast. And even now I'm starting to tear up. But when I still look back, it hurts. It hurts a lot to not be able to give a kid everything you want. And sometimes I wonder, is that pain more than I can handle at times, because there's still so much I feel I wanted her to enjoy in life. So that being said, my answer is you should enjoy having a kid. The flop side to it is I think you really need to plan it out. If it's not close to being perfect, you should question more. You shouldn't do it alone. Statistically, it screams out, don't do it. So I would scream out, don't do it. I think every kid deserves the best. If you can't offer them the best, second guess yourself. Now, don't take it to the extreme every time, because there are that will take it to the extreme. But also, if there's some kind of mental disorder in you or your spouse, you should really consider it, because I do believe there are people that should not have kids. Do not pass those genes on. Do not give a kid some of the problems that you have struggled with. And that's my opinion. I mean, people aren't going to agree with it, but I also have some other personal things, like my stepkids have a shitty father. If you're listening, you are a shitty father, and you should have never given birth to kids, and you should never give any more birth to kids. Plain and simple. But I'd have to go into a lot more details to explain that. But there are people that should never have it. So I agree with everything y'all said, as far as look at your age, look at your situation, look at your genetics, and look at what you can really offer a kid. I would not say that for single people to go out and do it, but if you can give a better life to a kid, even as a single parent, from what the situation is they're having, then you should. So every situation is different. Barb, you're up.
Option C, John. Sounds like you need to have Katie tell you whether or not she was given the best life. And it sounds like she would say that she was. So so maybe that's my deciding factor is if you think it has to be perfect before you have kids, then you might need to look back at your definition of perfect. It sounds to me like you gave your daughter a rather perfect childhood, because you were there and she's great. So I'm going to say that kids are a good thing, even with their screwed up parents. Kids are a good thing. And yeah, for all the caveats we have as to why you should or shouldn't, I think we get a little bit too hung up on whether or not we can give the perfect picture and give what we think they ought to have. I just don't think we said that a lot about our parents, and I don't think that our kids are saying it about us. I think they prefer us to be there than to have more stuff. So I think kids are good.
Can I do a postscript? I think I'm used to going last. Now I'm feeling like I'm the guy who has to have the last word.
Yeah, go for it.
No, wait. It's probably true. I just own it. Okay. One of the things that I heard you say, John, that made me think about me as a child. I guess throughout this whole podcast, I was thinking of me as a parent, right? But you made me reflect more as like a child, talking about Katie. And Katie's awesome. So when we're saying, should I have a kid or not, and the word abortion is popping up into your head, let me be sure that I'm saying that is a living child. And, you made a decision. I think that there's no good reason to abort a child. I don't think that that's that option, in my opinion, should not be on the table. And I think about Katie, and I think about what you just said, and I think like, Katie's so awesome. She's such an awesome human, and that's partially your fault, John. So, and I think about my own dad. Like, I could probably say some things that, me as a father, well, why didn't you do this, Dad? And why weren't these things perfect? But one of the things that I believe that my dad did well was love me. And everything that I heard come out of your mouth, John, was all out of love. It's not like you do a perfect job. You love the child and you do your best. And me, at the end of the day, when I look at my own parenting, like, that's what I fall back on is, am I loving these children enough for them to overlook all of the shortcomings that are Alton? And so let me add my postscript to what I said was, if you can fully love a child, then that should be huge on your decision, because I think that is maybe the most important thing, and not the money and the other things that we talked about, but how much you're willing to love. And love is an action and whatever, and I'll shut up. But it's a big deal, right? And how you feel towards a child and what you try to do, not always what you do or what you fail to do. I think that's a true statement for me in my life.
Well, guys, we appreciate you listening. This is the deciding factor. We do have the deciding factor extra that we do on the side, which is kind of a less serious, more goofy side. And
because we were serious in this podcast for sure. Some deep topics for sure, though.
Yeah, we do have some deep topics. But also don't forget to check us out on Facebook and Instagram, as well as Twitter. We are open to a lot of different conversations.
Yeah, keep sending your comments. I get a kick out of them. They're great. So keep them coming. Send them to John. Send them to Barbara. They love it.
Alton, I sent him a picture of a response we got the other day, and that girl was not happy with him, but it was funny.
I don't know. I think, I didn't try to friend her on Facebook, but
you should. You should.
I should. I totally should. Anyway, we love y'all for listening and talking all the trash about the things we say. It helps me sleep better at night.
Yeah. Share your comments and feedback. We love it, guys. We will see y'all on the next Deciding Factor. Everyone, say bye.
Bye-bye.
This has been another episode of The Deciding Factor, giving you food for thought on real life issues. Be sure to click, like, and subscribe to this podcast, as well as all your big social media outlets, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Don't forget to check out our website at thedecidingfactorpodcast.com and give us comments and feedback. Until next time, stay safe and remember to keep an open mind.